Faces and Facets of Religion and Creative Encounters, Living Religions in the United States. You can add your festival stories to social media with the hashtag 2023 festival. Oh, Folklife, 2023 Folklife, I got that wrong. The Smithsonian Folklife Festival is produced by the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and presented in partnership with the National Park Service, so thank you for the use of this space. This festival is made possible by people like you, so thank you so much for showing up. You can visit festival.si.edu to join our community of contributors. We also receive federally appropriated funds, Smithsonian Trust funds, contributions from governments, business, foundations, and individuals, in-kind assistance, and food, recording, and craft sales. The festival strives to maintain an accessible and inclusive environment for all visitors of all abilities. If you are in need of accessible seating options or assistive listening during this presentation, please give our venue manager, who's right over here in the blue shirt, let her know. Detailed accessibility information about all the festival activities, accessibility services including ASL interpretation, audio description, real-time captioning, and a variety of other services can be found on our festival website or by visiting the information booth. Promotional support is provided by the Washington Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority and Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Area Authority. The particular program, the Ozarks program, is produced in partnership with Missouri State University. The program is supported in part by Missouri State University, Missouri Division of Tourism, Arkansas Tourism, University of Arkansas, Experience Fayetteville, Wingate Foundation, Committee of 100 for Ozark Folk Center, Ozark Beer Company, Crystal Bridges Arts and Social Impact Accelerator Partnership, and Missouri for Folk Arts Program. The program received federal support from the Latino Initiatives Pool, administered by the National Museum of the American Latino, the Asian Pacific American Initiatives Pool, administered by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and the Smithsonian American Women's History Initiative Pool. In-kind support comes from Montana Cans and Mountain Valley Spring Water. Woo! Woo! Let's get started. Let's see. All right. So yeah, thank you for joining us today for Indigenous Ozarks. We have three people on the panel, but
Bradley apparently is not here.
Bradley's not here.
He's at the hotel.
Okay.
And they're trying to get hold of Nico.
Okay, so Nico may be coming. So it's just us. How do you feel about that, Nathan?
It is what it is. It is what it is. I can tell a little bit about my story. I certainly can't speak for anybody else. So I mean that's.
Well, let's introduce ourselves, and then I'll introduce myself, and then you can introduce yourself, and then we can kind of just talk through questions and things. So my name is Hali Dardar. I'm the program manager for the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage Language Initiatives. So we work with Indigenous and minoritized communities to support their language health. So I'm really excited to sit here today with Nathan. Yeah.
Kwekwe omataru harenda di o ijatsi Wyandotte ajatute. My name is Nathan Lee McAlister. My Wyandotte name is Harenda DEO, which means he is adept in song. I am an enrolled member of the Wyandotte Nation of Oklahoma. I live in Neosho, Missouri, which is just about 15 minutes from the border of Oklahoma, and so there are a lot of tribes very, very close to me and in the northeastern corner of Oklahoma, and so that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nathan. Just to get us started, I'm wondering if you can give us a quick life story for yourself. Maybe 1 or 2 minutes. How did you start?
A life story.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start at the beginning. I was born at the Claremore Indian Hospital in Claremore, Oklahoma. Came from a family that was very, very proud of our tribe, is very, very proud of our tribe, continues to be. Moved back to Missouri, which is, as I said, I'm barely in Missouri. And a lot of my family still lives in and around Wyandotte, Fairland, Oklahoma, which is in the Oklahoma Ozarks. Grew up in southwest Missouri, And what brought me here to this festival is that I'm a fiddle player and a banjo player, and grew up playing traditional music. And I had been brought up, I was fortunate to have a really great relationship with my great-great-grandmother, who was, at the time, the oldest living Wyandotte left. And she had told me, like, she died when she was 96. We have a lot of the gals in our family live a long, long time. And so she died when she was 96, and so I was able to have a really great relationship with her, and she was a great Wyandotte woman, and she had told me my whole life, your uncles were great fiddle players. And that didn't really mean a whole lot to me when I was really little. I think when you're a kid, things just don't necessarily sink in. And then a little bit later in life, I found something that brought that all home to me, and maybe that'll be another question that you'll ask me later. But there was one particular event in life after I had already began playing that really brought that full circle for me. But I am a musician, I'm an educator, I'm a high school art teacher, and I also am fairly involved with our cultural center in Wyandotte, Oklahoma, for the Wyandotte Nation. I do not work for the Cultural Center, but I do teach workshops there in traditional pottery and help with various things in our lifeways that we're trying to keep hold of. And so that's something that really keeps me going, keeps me very busy. So.
Thank you so much. And I want to make sure we're keeping time for questions too. So if you guys have a question while we're talking about things, feel free to raise your hand and go forward. But before we get the first question, I want to ask you. You put a little bunny trail out there, and let's follow it. So what was that moment?
My great grandmother, who, as I said, also Wyandotte, she had told me that my uncles were great fiddle players, and that never meant much to me as a kid. And then a few years ago, I just got to digging into some genealogy things and some family history things, and just doing a keyword search for some of my relatives, some of our ancestors that had passed away. And I came across an interview that was done in, I believe, 1937 with my great-great Uncle Henry Wright, who had been interviewed by the University of Oklahoma. And so at the time, back in the 30s, the University of Oklahoma had been going out and had been conducting interviews with Indigenous people that were living in Oklahoma, all through Oklahoma. And I had just Googled his name, Wright, and found an interview with James Wright, who was my great-great-uncle. And in the process of that, I found this 7-page interview with him where he had been interviewed by a researcher at the University of Oklahoma. And he talked about all different aspects of his life, and he talked about growing up. He was a very, very young man at the time of the Civil War. Talked about living in Oklahoma during that time, which was a very rough time because, Oklahoma was unaffiliated with either side, and at the time was very much a free-for-all for people on both sides of that conflict who were looking to get resources. And so he had talked a lot about, having their farm ransacked by North and South and bushwhackers. And so he talked about very few things in that article compared to his whole life, but one of the things he mentioned was his music. And he talked about having my great-great-great-grandpa Wright's violin that was brought down when we were moved from Ohio. Our tribe was moved from Ohio. And he talked about having that violin and how he was a square dance fiddler. And he mentioned that in 1937. And so it brought it home for me to hear him talk about he was making bows and arrows and just wearing moccasins and going and playing the fiddle at square dances. Because I was sitting there thinking, that's all the stuff I do. I never met this man. I just heard it, through ancestors, through family members. And so it brought that all home, and it was such a touching moment for me personally to think, because I've been told that my whole life, that he was a musician and, obviously native and living in the area. And so that was a powerful moment for me, not only musically, but just personally.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. It makes me think, that sounds like an awakening for yourself, like a moment that, where it almost like it tied what you naturally were doing and who you were to this longer and this longevity.
Absolutely. It was like I was like a born-again fiddle player, in a way, if there's a way to put it, because I had so much interest in the fiddle playing from the area already. But with a lot of things, you get caught in a rut or you can feel stagnant, and then something like that comes along that connects you both to your people, your tribe and your ancestors, but also the things that you enjoy doing now. It was a more powerful moment than I think a lot of people realized, so it was good to find that.
So do you see the work that you do, or the craft of your fiddling, as connected to your Indigenous and identity and heritage?
Yeah, I certainly do, because I don't have any record of any of my other side of the family doing that. The thing is, and to connect this back to the Ozarks, my family was moved to the Ozarks. I'm going to say that again. My family was moved. They were made to move. And when they came down here, they were already musicians, but I want to think that when they got here, they had to make the best of their situation and participate in a lot of the things that were going on at the time, and so I definitely feel that connection there, because we still do all the other stuff too. I mean, we do all the the whole the Indigenous culture aspect of things as well. It's an interesting merriment.
And I think we have we've got some popcorn questions, so we're gonna go here, and then here. Do we have a mic that we can pass around?
Okay. This is the kind of a question about your place. Wyandotte, Oklahoma, in the extreme northeast corner of the state here.
Yep. Yep.
Up until not very many decades ago, Wyandotte.
I think we do need a mic.
Yeah.
If you can pass it around, yeah.
My question.
Oh.
Yes.
Hold on, we're gonna get your question. We're working our best.
What if I ask you?
I can repeat it if you want to just ask the question. Yeah, if that works.
The question is about your place.
Sure.
Wyandotte,
Woo.
Oklahoma.
Okay.
The question is about your place, Wyandotte, Oklahoma. Until a few decades ago, Wyandotte, I think for over 100 years, was the home of the Seneca Indian School. And one of the places Robert Kennedy visited in the last months of his life was the Seneca Indian School. He visited there in 1968 as part of his work as a senator and because of his heart for marginalized people. And I just wonder if
I'll repeat the question. Yeah.
I haven't asked you.
Yeah.
The question is, do you have any family stories, personal stories, anecdotes that you've heard from other people about the Seneca Indian School, or even about Senator Kennedy?
Okay.
So the question is, does Nathan have any personal stories or memories about the Seneca Indian School or Kennedy's visit to the Seneca Indian School?
Okay, so what he's talking about was the Seneca Indian School, which was a boarding school in Wyandotte. Now, I do not have any personal stories about the visit to the Seneca Indian School. What I will tell you about the Seneca Indian School is the Wyandotte Nation headquarters, which includes our government building and our cultural center and also our fitness center and our gym, is built literally on exactly where the Seneca Indian School was. Okay, so I mean, when you walk outside of the cultural center, you are like basically at the front steps of what would have been the Seneca Indian School. And so I do know a lot of people who had family that went to the Seneca Indian School. Actually, the Cherokee potter Anna Mitchell, if any of you are familiar with Cherokee pottery, Anna Mitchell, who was really like the big advocate for bringing back Cherokee pottery. She went to the Seneca Indian School. Not on my blood family side, but on my aunt's, her ex-husband went to the Seneca Indian School. So it was a boarding school that was there, yes, in Wyandotte, Oklahoma. And if you know anything about boarding schools, they weren't the most pleasant places. Okay. My great-great-grandmother did not go to the Seneca Indian School. She went to Chilocco, which was a boarding school up closer to Ponca City, Oklahoma. But there were boarding schools scattered out. And if you're interested in anything about boarding schools, I mean, there's a lot of people that can speak to that with a lot more credibility than I do. But they were very tragic places, where basically kids were forced to go, where they were basically forced to assimilate, or at least attempt to assimilate into white society. They cut their hair off, they made them stop speaking their language, and any trace of indigenous customs were attempted to be erased from that person's life. And so yes, it's weird because I go down to the tribe every Thursday night and we sing, and we're singing our songs, and we're talking about learning our language and getting that back. And it's strange to do that literally sitting on top. I don't mean like it's a little ways away. I mean, we are on the foundation of the boarding school, and that's not lost on us. When we go down there every week, it's, me personally, I mean, I feel like, we've conquered something, to go down there and do that. So that's what I have to say about the Seneca Indian School in particular. Yeah, it's very close to, it can't get any closer to us.
It was as bad as the others, according to your understanding?
I don't know. I know it was, I don't have any reason to believe it would have been any different. That's all I can really say about it.
Thanks so much. That's a powerful story. I think you had another question?
Yep.
You must have answered. Did you have a question? Yes, please.
The violin tradition that you described, did that become incorporated into the indigenous music of the tribe, or was that a parallel? Because you mentioned square dancing, so I was wondering what role fiddle played with respect to the indigenous music.
Right. There's a tradition of indigenous people playing the fiddle. I mean, that is certainly nothing new. In fact, Jerry Bigfeather, have you heard of Jerry Bigfeather? He's Cherokee, and he lives down around Tahlequah. Really great fiddle player. And so they have a pretty good group. It's my understanding, COVID kind of interrupted a little bit, but there was a pretty good group of Cherokee that were still gathering to jam down around Tahlequah, Oklahoma. My family, because there were several fiddlers. I mentioned my Uncle James, but his son, Henry, played, and then his dad, George, played the violin, and so he was moved from Ohio in the 1840s and was already playing the violin. So that had been brought in by Europeans, and I think was probably picked up, I would say, fairly soon. But I think it was back then they were going to events just like we do now. I mean, there were dances going on, and it was places to socialize and drink and do all the stuff that happens at a square dance. And I think that's where that tradition comes from. It's not something, I mean, you're not going to go to a traditional or a ceremonial dance or a social dance that's put on by a tribe and see fiddle music being played. But there are people that play other instruments, for their own enjoyment.
I think we have, maybe your question, and then your question, and then your question. That works. I just want to thank you. This was supposed to be a panel of 3 people. With the rain, we've
Right.
come down, so we really appreciate you taking. We're halfway through this, but I really appreciate the spot on that you're having.
No,
with
you're
this.
fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
First, I want to say thank you for coming. We're really grateful to you.
Yes, thanks for having us.
My question is, back in your history, where did the name McAlister come from? And way farther back, where were the Wyandotte before you came to where you are now? Was that Trail of Tears?
So, my name McAlister is from my dad's side of the family, which is obviously a very Scots-Irish name. But in terms of the Wyandotte, so if you're not familiar with the name Wyandotte or Wyandotte, or on the Canadian side Wendat, you may be familiar with the word Huron, okay? And so we were basically the same thing as that. Huron is a French word for us, okay? Our word for us is Wyandotte. And so they were up around the lakes, and we were actually moved from Ohio in the 1840s. So in the mid-1840s, through...
Was this part of the Indian Removal Act of 1830?
Yes. So they said, go down, you're getting on a steamboat on the Ohio River and you're going to Kansas. So our people were put on a steamboat, taken down the Ohio, up the Missouri, and they were dropped off in what is now Wyandotte County, Kansas. So if you're not familiar with Wyandotte County, Kansas, it's actually the Kansas side of Kansas City, and is now like the most populated. I think it's, if not the most populated county in Kansas, it's really close. It's right there on the Missouri border, and that's where we were first at. And we were there for a period of some years, not very long at all. And then we were brought by WAG because they offered us the chance to become citizens, or be moved to Oklahoma. Some of those Wyandottes took citizenship, okay, and now there's a tribe, the Wyandotte of Kansas, okay, and then those who did not take citizenship, like my family, were put on wagons and were taken to northeastern Oklahoma, okay. And so what a lot of people, and if there's anything to take away, if there's anything I want anybody to take away from this, it's nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with my story, nothing to do with fiddle playing. I just want people to know that in the Ozarks, in our region, there are a wealth of Indigenous people, especially on the Oklahoma side, but it drifts out. Like I said, I live in Missouri. We have a lot of people that live in Arkansas. In Ottawa County alone, there's like 9 tribes. Okay, there's 39 tribes in Oklahoma that are federally recognized. Something like 9 of them, or 8 or 9, are in Ottawa County, Oklahoma. And so you're going to have Wyandottes, Eastern Shawnee, Seneca Cayuga, Ottawa, Peoria, Quapaw, Modoc, and I'm leaving several of them out, but it's a very diverse area with tribes that are in that corner of Oklahoma, and it's important to recognize that that's part of it. We also need to recognize the tribes that were there a long time ago, like the Osage, okay? So all of this forced migration shaped the region, especially in Oklahoma, in a certain way. And it's a story, it's part of the Ozark story, you know, that element of it. And it's a lot of it that gets forgot, okay? Because people think, oh, Oklahoma, it's its own thing, and it's really not. If you've been to northeastern Oklahoma, it's very much the Ozarks, you know, culturally, geographically, and so that's why it's important for that to be included in this.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think we had 2 other questions. A question again. We keep on answering your question. I think we had the woman in the front had a question. Did you have a question? We're just answering.
I'm just answering all the questions.
I think you, sir, in the back had a question. You're doing a great job.
Hi, so could you give us a sense of to what extent the Wyandottes live in a community together, or as opposed to being part of the general population and then getting together in the community center or something like that, which I think may be different from what I'm used to in the West.
Absolutely, it is. It is different than probably what you're used to in the West. I also want to say I do not work for the tribe. I don't speak on behalf of the tribe. I am Wyandotte. I'm speaking my own opinions and my own personal experiences here. But the way government works in our tribe and several others that I'm familiar with, it's not like a reservation where everyone's living in one spot, like you may see up north in the Dakotas or something like that, or out west in Arizona or New Mexico. We have a tribal nation, which is our land that we actually purchased from Seneca Cayuga a long, long time ago, like when we first came to Oklahoma, because we had nowhere to go. We basically were able to work out a deal with Seneca Cayugas to have a place to go at all. And on that parcel of land, we have our like our tribal headquarters where the offices are. We have like a fitness center and clinic, okay, where we offer medical services for people in our nation. We have the cultural center, which is what I'm most familiar with because I do things there almost on a weekly basis, either making pottery or singing songs or beadwork or those kinds of things. But then we also have a building where we have programs for like elder services where we provide meals to our tribal elders. We have a preschool and a library. We have a regional chain of gas stations. And then we also have, at this point, I think it's like 5 casinos where we operate in order to bring in funds that are distributed in those programs to our tribal citizens. But another thing is, and I think it's worth mentioning, is the involvement of the tribes in our region, on the Oklahoma side especially, but it bleeds over. The tribal involvement in giving back to the community is something that's very, very strong in our region. Tribes, the Quapaw tribe operates an ambulance service in northeastern Oklahoma. That's a mission that they have decided to do, and something, a service to offer. And it's for the community. Okay, it benefits everyone in the community. Our tribe will purchase fire trucks, police cars, things like that for things in the community. Every tribe has its own thing where it tries to give back. And I think a lot of people don't realize when they're driving roads, tribes work on roads, tribes work on bridges, tribes open up restaurants and supermarkets for people in the community. Tribes open up hardware stores in communities where people aren't able to go get things to work on their house. It's like it goes on and on and on and on, tribal involvement in our region. And it's amazing how well they work together to fill in those gaps and provide things. I would not be the person I am or have opportunities that I've had without our tribe, the Wyandotte. And that's through really the work of a great tribal council, great elders, and great tribal leadership going way back, you know. And so we're very, very fortunate, and I know a lot of other tribal citizens would feel the same way.
I have a question for you too, kind of following up on that. You know, some people times, being Indigenous, people, you know, ask me to show up to things, but they also ask me to wear regalia at that moment, you know. And when I think of what connects with me, it's usually my cleanest pair of jeans. You know, this idea that, you know, Indigenous people can exist in the contemporary 21st century. So I had a question about your T-shirt. If you're looking, it says, "Think Wyandotte." We talked a little bit about tangible cultural heritage. So we talked about the music practice, your fiddle practice. We also talked about the sense of place through these places that, you know, that have layers, palimpsest layers of meaning for Indigenous communities. But thinking about intangible, could you explain a little bit about what your T-shirt means to you?
So a little word about the shirt itself. These shirts were given several years ago. I think it was the state of Ohio. It was a group in Ohio had given back an old church that was the Wyandotte Mission Church that was in Upper Sandusky, Ohio, and we were actually given that land back. And that is happening. It's a very good thing that that's starting to happen, but it was given back, and so some tribal elders and several other people had went to Ohio to celebrate that and to commemorate that and to bless that we had been given that sacred property back to us. And they had printed off these shirts. And basically, to me, it just means I'm always thinking from the Wyandotte perspective of what I'm doing, about my ancestors that came before me, because this is a very real thing to me. Like, this isn't some type of charade. I mean, it's something that I've been brought up with, and it's something I'm very proud of, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. And so really it's always in my mind, like the Wyandotte perspective of doing things, and the outlook on how we handle the earth, and hopefully how we treat other people, and how we treat and view history and our culture and all of that stuff. And so it's just a good reminder. And also, I just want people to know, I'll see people and they'll ask me about my shirt because they think it's a chicken, and so I'll have to tell them about that. But that's a little bit about actually what the shirt is, and then what it means to me.
What's the state of your language?
So the question is, what is the state of the Wyandotte language?
The Wyandotte language, I had been talking to one of the basket makers, the Cherokee basket makers, earlier this week, and Cherokees have a great language program. There's more and more speakers all the time, and she had talked about how their language, she had often referred to, or had heard it referred to as it hadn't died, but it went to sleep. And that kind of set with me because I see it as the same. Like, I feel like our language was close to being gone, but it just went to sleep a little bit. And since you're, involved with language, I mean, I would definitely be interested in hearing your perspective on this as well. But our language, we are working with linguists. We have at least a couple different linguists that we work with that are helping us regain our language and have it spoken more. And that's one of the big things. I just can't say enough good things about the programs that our tribe is offering to get people down to the cultural center and be involved with our culture. And one of them is language. And so we have the linguists, and we have people that work at the cultural center that create programming to get people speaking our language again. We also have a speaker named Richard Zane Smith, who is from just east of Wyandotte, that comes in and helps us every week, and we sing our songs, and we're starting to speak language again. And it's really, really important. I don't know, I sit here and think, and I don't know if there's anything that can connect someone more to their place than language. The thing is, I want people to understand there is a real hurt to be someone like myself and who makes pottery and who weaves wampum belts and does beadwork and wants to do traditional cooking and language and songs. And there's a hurt to people asking you questions, and you have to just say, I don't know, because it literally was taken. You're just having to make guesses or fill in the blanks with people who have a different piece of that puzzle. And so that can be very frustrating at times, and lately for me, that's come with language. Because I can look at something that was made, I can look at a wampum belt and I can see, okay, how they did that. I can look at a piece of pottery and typically see how they did that or what they were going for. But language is it's vapor, and when it's gone, it's literally gone. There's nothing left. And so, fortunately, we're trying to get that back. The Wyandottes in particularly are very fortunate because the anthropologist and folklorist Marius Barbeau, came down in 1911 and 1912 and actually recorded some of our speakers on wax cylinder. So we had access to those wax cylinders to hear some of our songs being sung and some of our language being spoken. And he came down and did quite a bit of work in writing down our language. So we have that, but if we didn't have that, we would be in pretty rough shape.
Okay. And I think I also, while you're saying that, I realize I need to thank you because, everything is kind of connected in the language space too. The fact that Wyandotte is sleeping encouraged people in the 90s to get involved, particularly Wyandotte people, particularly a Wyandotte linguist, to get involved and work on reconstructing and making the language available. And that linguist now, I believe she's at the University of Vancouver, but she's not only working on Wyandotte, but she's also encouraging and supporting other Indigenous linguists. And, I remember taking a class with her, and so in some small way, the fact that your language is in a difficult situation is helping other languages in that sense.
Right.
It really connects everyone together.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, language connects you so much, and so does your name. And we've really been getting on a push to get people their name, and working with linguists to get their naming done, which means so much to have, a name in your language. That was one of the greatest days of my life, to stand before them and get that done. It was really important,
Are you comfortable talking about that process?
Yeah, so the way we did it, you present, like the elders with what qualities, and you have a dialogue about that, what your qualities are, and they work it up, with the linguist, and it's determined and it's given to you. It's like not something you negotiate, it's like, oh, I don't want to be, you get it, and then typically that's done at ceremony. So.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. We're getting close to time. We probably have time for one or two more questions, but I think we finally have found something that we haven't answered yet. So yeah.
Thank you for being here. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, so
Okay.
it's really fascinating to hear the origin of Wyandotte County just across the state line in Kansas. So your people were forced to move from Ohio, and so apparently that land was seen as more valuable, important, whatever, than the land where I grew up. So I'm interested in why the land in Ohio was considered more valuable than the land where I grew up.
I don't really know. Anything I said would just be pure speculation. I think it just comes down to the fact that, like a lot of things in this country, it's shaped by somebody wants something, and it could be natural resources. It could be votes. It could be any number of things. But for us, I think, like a lot of things, it's things move from east to west, and you secure a stake of an area, and then you go out, and it was just Kansas was later to be secured. It got statehood much later than Ohio, and in the process of states becoming in the process of land becoming states and entering statehood, that's when a lot of these things came into being, where people were like, all right, and so it was like, you're going to stay here, you're going to be a U.S. citizen and, a Kansas citizen, or you're going to go to, because at that time Oklahoma was still Indian territory. Oklahoma didn't become a state till 1910. So, and even then, they took our land, like basically every other tribe, and then forced us to allot that, and so it broke that up into personal property ownership, with parcels of land in what is a very, European system of land ownership, where you own your bit of land and you cultivate it and pay your taxes on it, and that's not at all what, the indigenous perspective of, land, how you care for your land, so.
Well, Nathan, I appreciate it so much. I think we're coming to our last moments with you, and thanks for being in the hot seat as the sun comes down. Could you tell us, I'm wondering if you have any other final thoughts, and then, I know that people may want to talk to you while you're still at the festival, so could you tell us a little bit about where you're going to be after you get off the stage, and where you're going to be for the next few days?
Yeah, so we're going to be here, we're playing on we always want to call it the picking porch. We get picking parlor and front porch mixed up. This is the front porch. We're going to be at the picking parlor a little bit later today, playing music, and then we're going to have a square dance tomorrow night. But like I said, I'm here for the music thing, but I do a lot of tradition of art, you know, and pottery, beadwork, making wampum belts, all of that kind of stuff, you know, making moccasins, working on regalia and things like that. So I'm always interested to talk about those kinds of things with anyone who wants to come check that out, and I'll let you know what I can and what I'm comfortable with, and we can go from there.
Well, Yakuke, thank you so much, Nathan, for all of your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.